stop when you reach the end. Don't you know you're never gonna ever end it, and don't you understand you resemble a fool having a meant to give it up and smile? Love me some Lemon Demon. Hello everyone, my name is Stonsey Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we're reading pages 221 to 239. The first actual official cut pages where it's actually how it's supposed to be. A little different. 1 second, please. I'm playing Cookie Clicker right now. Praying to God I turned off the audio, and I have an auto clicker on, of course. I'm trying to replace my crops. But when I record these videos, I have my little love seat. I guess that's what these are called. Yeah, I have my audio turned off. And, yeah. Okay, I just replanted all my crops. Cool. Cool. Accidentally unplanted them with my auto clicker. That was my bad. But, yeah. Without further ado, let's end part 2. The gardener glanced at the braid that very obviously wasn't Zara's, then back to me. Lorraine's been crying, he murmured. He says Bliss attacked her. It's just hair. I looked him square in the eyes. It isn't you or your sons. We don't have to tolerate her hurting us. I'll speak with her. He kissed my cheek and went to Zara. But Desmond held back with a puzzled, slightly worried frown. Is there something I'm missing? He asked me quietly. Too much. I know you'll miss her, but we'll get her taken care of. She'll be fine. Don't. Maya. No, you don't know. You should. You've seen enough. Well, I do know. You don't get to tell me she'll be fine. Right now, you don't get to tell me anything. Avery is the gardener's firstborn, but in the ways that matter, Desmond was his heir. And before long, we find out just how much his father said he was. I looked back at Zara, but the gardener was in the way. Ignoring Desmond's hurt gaze, I walked away. Returning my tray to the kitchen and taking a spiteful glee in Lorraine's sniffles and her mere inch of half of ragged hair, I declined an offer of several of the girls to join them and went back to my room alone. After maybe half an hour, the walls came down. Zara was too injured for a final tryst. After all, Desmond was here with them. I curled up in my bed and put with the play, read all the notes in the margins, and got to know Felicity Farrington a little. Around 3 in the morning, the wall had blocked me from the hallway lifted. Only that wall, the ones on the other side, I looked at the display cases and, if you squinted, into Marika's and Izara's rooms, stayed in place. They had been there for weeks, and with strange breed of lovely did not see dead bodies every time I opened my eyes. I closed on my finger, steeling myself to see the gardener in the doorway, one hand on his belt and his eyes full of excitement. But it was Desmond. His pale green eyes, haunted and bruised the way he hadn't seen in months. He clutched a glass wall to keep himself standing, his knees buckling and swaying with every attempt to support his weight. I closed the book properly, slid it onto a shelf, and sat up on the bed. He took a few wobbly steps into the room and fell hard on his knees. He buried his face in my hands and flinched violently, stirring his hands like they'd somehow been separate from the rest of him. A sickly, sour chemical smell wafted around him. The same scent I noticed any time I was near the honeysuckles in the front door. His entire body shook as it doubled over, pressing the forehead against the cool metal floor. Almost 10 minutes passed before he said a word, and even this his voice is hoarse and broken. He promised he would take care of her. He did, but he put her out of pain and prevented her from decay, I said neutrally. Murdered her. Not entirely his father's son, then. I pulled off my clothing and knelt down in front of him, unbuttoning his shirt. He gave me a sick look and batted his hands away. I'm putting you in the shower. You reek. Formaldehyde, he uttered. This time he let me undress him, and stumbled along behind me as I pulled him across the room and sit in the shower. A twist of my wrist sent warm water pouring over him. There was nothing sexual about what happened next. It was like bathing Sophia's girls when they're half asleep. When I told him to lean forward and lift his arm or close his eyes, he obeyed, but numbly, like he didn't exactly make sense. My shampoo and body wash were both fruity as hell, but I washed him head to toe until the only remaining chemical smell was his clothing. I draped him in towels and used one of his shoes to pull his clothing into the hallway. They returned to dry both of us off. I had to keep wiping his face, unseen in the shower. A constant stream of tears ran down his cheeks. He ejected something to make her sleep, he whispered. I thought that we were going to carry her out of the car, but he opened the room I'd never seen before. He shut erect his body. Once she fell asleep, we put her in the orange-yellow dress. I laid her out on the embalming table, and then he hooked up. Please don't tell me, I said quietly. No, I have to, because he's going to do that to you someday, isn't he? That's how he keeps you, by embalming you while you're still alive. Another shudder, a sob fractured his voice, but he continued. He stood there, explaining all the steps to me, so I could do it on my own someday. He said, love was more than just pleasure, he said. had to be willing to do hard things to do. He said, come on, you're still shivering. He let me lead him into the bed and pull the covers over him, and I sat beside him, atop a blanket, hands in my lap. He said if I really loved you, I wouldn't let any hand other than my own take care of you, Des. He showed me some of the others. I thought he just left them back on the streets. I didn't realize. He broke down completely, weeping in intensity, damn near shook the bed. I rubbed circles of the back as he choked on sobs, unable to give him comfort than that because he didn't know the full truth. Zara had a bone infection, and he thought all the broken people killed themselves or let themselves go completely, that they died. He didn't know about attitudes and ages. In that moment, when he was so close to broken himself, I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I couldn't use him broken. I needed him brave. I didn't think he ever would be. He picked out her case, he managed a few minutes later. He made me carry her there, showed me how to pose her, how to close the glass completely, to pour resin in. Before he closed the glass, he kissed her goodbye. He gave her a jerky nod, hiccuping before force of his sobs. He told her he loved her. As he understands it, he does. How can you even stand to be around me? Sometimes I can, I admitted. I keep telling myself that you don't know the whole of it, and that you're ignorant of so much that your father and brother do, and some days, that's the only way I could even look at you. But you, please tell me. But you're a coward, I sighed. You know that keeping us here is wrong, but you know it's against the law, and you know he rapes us, and now he knows he kills us. And some of these girls might even have families looking for them. You know this is wrong, but you don't report it. You said you were going to learn how to be braver for me, but you haven't. And I honestly don't know if you can. Finding out about this, having it all come out, it would kill my mother, I shrugged. Give it enough time and it will kill me too. Cowardice may be your natural state, but it's still a choice. Every day you know about the garden. Don't call the police or let us go. You're making the same choice again and again. It is what it is, Desmond. You're just not going to pretend anymore. He stared, weeping again. And maybe it was weeping still, all massive shock that compounding past his ability to bear it. He spent the rest of the dark morning lying slightly on my bed, and then sunlight came in the garden. He gathered up his formaldehyde-scented clothing and walked away. He didn't talk to me for weeks, and only came in the garden once to see Zara, after the resin solidified and the wall came away from her case. All the walls lifted again, and the reality had blurred over the summer, crashed out before the resounding force. We were butterflies, and our short lives would end in glass. Wait, I thought you said things changed with Keeley, Edison says. Oh, it did. I did, yes, I'm getting there. Oh? He rubs her thumbs against the blue dragon's neck and keeps a deep breath. Keeley arrived 4 days ago. It took time to keep my promise to Zara. The gardener agreed to let us a full set of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I told him that it was but he wanted the affair done right. He ordered up all sorts of costumes and gave Bliss blocks of clays that weighed as much as she did make us flower clowns. He assisted parts and coached girls in the language. Some of them had to read a play or two in English, but most didn't have much in the way of real exposure. I'd lived for almost 2 years with Noemi, who walked around with apartment in her underwear, reading around soliloquies, and she brushed her teeth. Yes, brushed her teeth, which for that very reason took for fucking ever. When the evening arrived, the gardener had Lorraine arrange a feast in the garden itself, spread both sides of the little stream. We made these strange chairs somewhere between ottoman and beanbag, all in bright colors, and each of us had semi-sheer silk grounds, and beautiful colors that for once had nothing to do with the wings inked on our backs. I was reading that Helena and Gardner had given me a gown of forest moss greens, and a single layer of deep rose. That was the color Bliss matched for my crown of clay roses. That most of us wore our hair down under the crowns, simply because that one night we could. There was sharp edge in the laughter we all prepared. We were doing this for Zara, but the gardener had made it into a fancy, even knowing our reason for it. I'm sure he was convinced that it was measure of how happy we were under his living care as we wanted to put on entertainment for him. That man had an astonishing talent for seeing what he wanted to see. He hadn't even noticed that Lorena brought the wig so she could still seem to have long, well-maintained hair for him and want to play with the sick bitch. He persuaded Desmond to attend. He was thrown, I think, by his son's reaction to Zara's death. Des was his father's son, but he didn't have to be perspective. Desmond couldn't see it as anything but murder. Yet, it didn't push him into action. At the end of the first week of silence and absence from his son, the gardener came to my room before breakfast. Desmond seems very out of sorts, he announced as soon as marginally awake. Did you two argue? I yawned. He's having trouble processing what's happening to Zara. But Zara's fine. She's out of pain. He honestly seemed confused. When you said you were going to take care of her, you thought you meant take her to a hospital. That'd have been foolish. there would have been questions asked. All I'm doing is translating. Yes, of course. Thank you, Maya. I'm sure there are a number of father-son conversations in the intervening weeks to which I wasn't privy. But Desmond showed up for the reading. It didn't look like he slept for shit. He must have had a presentation in class that day because he was wearing a dress shirt and a tie and khakis. Granted, the shirt was open as the collar, the tie loose, and the sleeves rolled back. It was still dressier than usual. I was somewhat disgusted with myself for the fleeting thought that the seafoam green shirt looked really good with his eyes. It was a hard time looking directly at any of us, especially me. I told Bliss the gist of our last discussion over the night, making fake chocolate chip cookies with which to trick Lorraine. He shrugged and said I was kinder than she would have been. Seeing as the clay cookies were her idea, I didn't argue. The reading started really well, until Zara's notes. I've never paid much attention to the words. Once you hear to be or not to be. Mangled by toothpaste, it gets a little hard to care. But this is really funny play, and we ended up whenever we could. Bliss played Hermia, and during one of the scenes we argued, she actually pounced on me across the stream, starting a belly laugh from the gardener. In the middle of one of Marenka's speeches as Puck, the front door slammed open the frame. Avery, a tiny bundle over one shoulder. Marenka stopped, looked at me, and her eyes wide within her mask of white peacock. I stood and went to her side, watching Avery jog into the garden. After a moment, the gardener and Desmond stood beside us. I brought us a new one, Avery announced. His face wreathed with smiles. He shrugged off his burden, letting it drop to sand. I found her. I got her. Look, father, see what I found for us? The gardener was too busy with staring at his older son, so I knelt down and twitched beside the wrapped blanket and shaking hands. A few girls screamed, "Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fucking shit." The girl inside wasn't even hit puberty yet. Blood crusted one side of her face and streaks at her temple. The fair skin was already starting to bruise, and the other bruises, scratches, impressions she could have been through tears, clothing. As they pulled away the rest of the blanket, more blood soaked her thighs and fabric around it. Shit. Her underwear was covered in pink and purple cursive Saturdays, and the kind of thing you don't know they don't make in big girl sizes. A really inappropriate part of my brain noted that it was only Thursday. She was small, with gangly limbs and impression of growth. Like suddenly she'd shoot up, pretty in preteen kind of way. With a ruined ponytail and almost up copper hair, very, very young. I wrapped the blanket back around her, hide the blood, and hold her close, utterly speechless. Avery, whispered the shocked gardener. What the hell have you done? I absolutely did not want to be a part of that conversation. Danielle helped me stand the girl with my arm, supporting her head. Bliss, your dress with the back. Can we have that? She nodded and raced away to her room. Danielle and I walked quickly into my room, where we stripped the new girl. Through her ruined clothing in the laundry chute, watched her, and I watched the blood from her thighs gently squirt more water into her flushed fluids and bits of torn tissue. Danielle was busy rushing into the toilet. She came back, shaping a hand across her face. She doesn't even have any hair down there yet, she whispered. No hair on her crotch or underarms, no breasts, no hips. It was definitely still a child. Danielle held her up so I could wash her hair. By then, Bliss was there with her dress. Only thing that was likely to fit her and keep her fully covered. Even if it was a bit loose, so we got her dried off, clothed, and tucked into my bed. But now that she's here, do you think... Not even Bliss could finish that thought. I shook my head, inspecting the girl's hand where the several nails had torn short. She must have thought, they're not touching her. Maya, they're not touching her. A pained bellow ripped through the garden and we flinched. But it wasn't a female, so we didn't move. Other girls fled the sound, crowding into my room, until I finally told most of them to leave. I had no idea when the child was going to wake up. She was going to be terrified and in pain, and really didn't have 20-something people staring at her. Only Danielle and Bliss stayed. Danielle kept herself behind the girl, so her face wouldn't have seen it right away. Except for a bookshelf on my right wall, it didn't entirely hide Lionette. Bliss tugged the curtain from my toilet as far as she could go, lifting the bottom and tucking it between several of the books and anchor it. If you knew something was there, you could still see her hair, the curve of her spine, but not a casual glance. And we waited. Bliss made a quick errand of fresh bottles of water, as well as bullying a few aspirin out of the cowed Lorraine. Aspirin wasn't going to do much for the long run, but it was great against headaches and from the drugs, but that wasn't what she had. But it was something anyway. And the gardener appeared in my doorway. She glanced at the wall and the arrangement of curtain, then the girl on the bed, and nodded, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small control, and after a minute of fiddling with it, the walls came down on either side, leaving the front open. How is she? Unconscious, I said shortly. She's been raped, and she's been hit very hard on the head, and she'll have a world of other hurts. Was there anything to show her name, or where she came from? No. I gave her hand to Bliss, and I could walk in the room, standing right in the pale, suddenly worn-looking man. No one touches her. Maya. No one touches her. No wings, no sex, nothing. She is a child. To my shock, he actually nodded. I'm giving her to your care. Danielle cleared her throat. Sir? She isn't actually woken up yet. Shouldn't we be taken anywhere? Left at the hospital or something? She wouldn't know anything. I can't trust that she didn't see Avery, he said angrily. She has to stay. Danielle bit her lip and looked away, her hand stroking the girl's hair. I think it's the best you leave, I told him evenly. We don't know when she's going to wake up. It could be best not to have any males present. Of course, yes. You tell me if she needs anything. She needs her mother and her virginity, snapped Bliss. She needs to be safely at home. Bliss. She snorted, but fell silent at the warning tone. You'll tell me, he said again, and I nodded. I didn't bother to watch him leave. He was gone long before Desmond came, that bruised even stronger in his eyes. Will she be all right? No, I said stiffly, but I think she'll live. What? That yell. Father canned Avery. Yes, because that will make her feel so much better, Bliss snarled. Go fuck yourself. What did he do to her? What do you think he did to her? Shook her hand? Desmond. I didn't continue until he was finally looking at me, meeting my eye. This is what your brother is. This is what all three of you do. So right now you need to not be here. I know you're full of self-pity and loathing right now, but I will not have any males around this child. You need to go. I'm not the one who hurt her. Yes, you are, snapped. You could have prevented this. If you just gone to the police or let any of us go so we could go to the police, everyone would have been free to kidnap her or savage her or rape her. Bring her here, all happen again and again and again until she's dead too young. You allowed this to happen, Desmond. Actively allowed it. So yes, you are the one who hurt her. If you're going to do anything to help her, you need to get the hell away from her. He stared at me, his face pale and shocked, when he turned and walked away. How could a child be worth less than a name? How could all our lives be worth less than a reputation? Bliss looked after him, then reached out and touched my hand. Do you think he'll come back? I don't care. And when mostly true, I was even tired in a way that went deeper into my bones. I simply did not have the energy to think of Desmond's continued unuselessness. The girl finally regained consciousness around 2 in the morning, groaning as she started to feel various aches and pains. I sat in bed and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Keep your eyes closed, I said, softly, pitching the voice low and comforting as Lionel had taught me to. I pretty much never done it before, but this girl needed me softer to her, fiercer for her. Sophia, I thought, would have recognized that distinction. I'm going to put a damp cloth over your face to help take away from that pain. Danielle wrung a washcloth and handed it to me. Where? What? We'll get to that bit, I promise. Can you swallow pills? She started crying. Please don't drug me. I'll be good. I promise. I won't fight anymore. It's aspirin, nothing more. I promise you that. It's only help a pain a little. She let me sit her up enough to put the pills in her tongue and drink some water. Who are you? My name is Maya, but I'm taken by some people who took you. But I'm not going to let them hurt you anymore. They won't be able to touch you. I want to go home. I know, I whispered, adjusting cloth over her eyes. I know you do. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be blind anymore. Please let me see. I shielded her eyes and slid her away the cloth, watching her blink against the much light. Her eyes were different colors, one blue and one gray. The blue had 2 freckles and iris. I angled my hand to see if my face without staring directly into overhead light. Better? I hurt, she whimpered. Tears spilled over the corner of her eyes and hair. I know you do, sweetheart, I know. She rolled over and pressed her face into my lap, her skinny arms wrapping around my lips. I want my mom. I know, sweetheart. I curled her over, my hair spilling at her, in any kind of shield. I felt her tightly as I could without causing pain. I'm sorry. Sophia's Jilly would have 11 by now. This girl seemed about the same age, maybe a year older, but thinking of Jilly hurt just then. The child looked so young, that fragile, so broken. I didn't want to think of bold little Jilly like that. She cried herself back to sleep, and then when she woke up a few hours later, Briss brought us all fruit. Lorraine didn't make breakfast. She whispered to me and Danielle. She'd been sitting in the kitchen staring at the wall all night, according to Zulema and Wilna. I nodded and took one of the bananas, taking my seat next to the child. Here, you must be hungry. Not really, she said miserably. Part of that is shock, but you try to eat anyway. The potassium will help your muscles, help them not be so tight and painful. She gave a quivering sigh and took the banana and bit into it. This is Bliss, I said, pointing at my tiny friend. And this is Danielle. Can you tell us your name? Keely Rudolph, she answered. I live in Sharpsburg, Maryland. Forever and a half ago, Gullion would have made something about Maryland. Keely, do you think you will be brave for me? Tears wept in her eyes, but God love her, she nodded. Keely, this place is called the Garden. There's a man and his 2 sons to keep us here. They make sure we have food and clothing, and we have what we need. But they don't let us go. I'm so sorry that you were kidnapped and brought here, but I can change that. I can't promise that you'll ever see your home or family again. She sniffled, and I slid my arm under her shoulders, hugging her against my side. I know it's hard, but I'm not saying that. I really do know, but I promise that I'll take care of you. I won't let them hurt you. Those 2 of us who kept here are kind of a family. We argue from time to time, but we don't really like each other. But we're family, and family looks out for each other. Bliss gave me a crooked smile, even though she didn't know much. She knew it wasn't how I'd been raised. But I'd gotten a taste of that in the apartments. I learned the best of it here, and we're a fucked up family, but that family nonetheless. Keely looked at Danielle and shrank against me. Why does he have a tattoo on her face? She whispered. Danielle knelt down in front of the bed, taking both Keely's hands in hers. There's another thing you have to be brave for, she said gently. Do you want to hear it now, or do you want to wait for a little bit? Biting her lip, the child gave me an uncertain look. It's your choice, I told her. Now or later, you can choose. If it makes it easier, I promise that it's not going to happen to you. With a deep, shaky breath, she nodded. Now then. Man who keeps us, we call him the gardener, Danielle said simply. He likes to think of us as butterflies in his garden, and he tattoos wings on our back to help him pretend. When I was first brought here, I thought if I made him like me more than anyone else, he'd let me go and I could go home. I was wrong, but I didn't learn that quickly enough, and he did the wings on my face to show others that he thought I was happy with what he did. He looked at my face. You have wings too? On my back, yes. Her eyes flickered over to Bliss, who nodded. But you won't let him do that to me? I won't let him touch you at all. He took her out in the garden in early afternoon. Bliss going ahead of us and warned the other girls. Normally, most of the others stayed away from the new girl until she was settled. Keely was different. Singly or in pairs, and non-threateningly as possible, every girl at Servat came to say hello, to introduce herself, and maybe just importantly, to promise that they'd help protect her. I was okay with Servat absenting herself from that. Marinka knelt down and let Keely trace the white browns and blacks of the wings on her face as if she was scared anymore. I'm going to move my things so you'll be right next to Maya, he told her. That way, if you get scared and don't want to be alone, you won't have to worry about getting lost. You'll be right next to her. Thank you, she managed. Lorraine roused herself up and put together the cold lunch for us. Though she was crying the entire time, I want to believe that maybe she realized that the gardener was. She was horrified that the child so young had been taken, and then was mortified over how she'd been mooning and jealous of dead girls. I really wanted to believe the little good of her. I didn't, though. I didn't know why she was so shocked and upset, but I didn't think of anyone's situation but hers. Maybe buying a wig, or more likely, Bliss not getting in trouble for the attack, maybe made her realize that the gardener was never going to love her again. We took lunches up to the cliff, where the sun was warm and the space around us open. Keely still didn't have much of an appetite, but she ate to humor us. When she saw Desmond walk up the path and she bared herself against me, Bliss and Danielle moved in close, as well protecting her on all sides. Desmond wasn't a threat, but he was a male. I understood the impulse. He stopped a safe distances away, kneeling down on the rock, spreading his arms wide. I'm not going to hurt you, he said quietly. I'm not going to touch you, or even come any closer than this. I shook my head. Why are you here? To ask her name and where she came from, so I could do what's right. I started to scoot off the rock, but Keely's arms tightened around my waist. It's okay, I whispered, hugging her close. I'm just gonna go talk to him. You can stay right here with Bliss and Danielle. What if he hurts you? She whimpered. He won't. This one doesn't. I'll be right back. You'll see me the whole time. She slowly released to transfer her grip to Danielle. Bliss was soft and curvy, but she was not cuddly. I walked past Desmond to the very edge of the cliff, and after a moment he followed me. He stood a foot away, shoving his hands in his pockets. What are you doing? That's right, he answered. I'm calling the police, and I need to know her name. There's got to be an Amber Alert out for her. Why now? We've chosen the gardener for 6 months now. How old is she? I glanced back over my shoulder. She and her friends were hanging out at the mall to celebrate her 12th birthday. She swore and studied his feet, the toes in his shoes a little over the edge of the rock. I've been trying so hard to convince myself that my father's telling the truth, that even if you're not here by choice, you at least came from something to rescue her from. And still, in the face of a 12-year-old girl, he was deluding himself. The streets may be for bad families, he continued. Something that was made this a little bit better, but I can't. I know this is Avery who took her, not father, so this has to stop. You're right, I am a coward, I'm selfish, because I don't want to hurt my family, and I don't want to go to jail, but that girl is... He stopped, bending the force of the words and tangle emotion behind him. I kept telling myself I needed to learn to be braver, and Jesus, what a stupid thing to think. You don't learn to be brave, you just have to do what's right, and if it scares you, I'm going to call the police with as many names as I'm going to tell them about the garden. You're really calling? I asked. He flashed me an angry look. Yes, I'm asking. Because can't go and tell that girl that help is on the way if you're going to back out or bury your head back in the sand. Are you really doing this? He took a deep breath. Yes, I'm really doing this. I reached out and lightly touched his cheek and bring his eyes to mine. Her name is Keely Rudolph, and she lives in Sharpsburg. Thank you. He turned to walk away and then stopped, walked back and pulled me into a searing kiss, and then walked away without another word. I returned to the rock. We need to stay in my room for the rest of today, I told the girls. Go ahead without me. I'm just going to tell everyone else. Do you really think she's going to do it? Bliss asked. I think he's really going to try, and God help him if he doesn't work. Go Go, quickly. It was the ultimate game of hide and seek, tracking down each girl, telling her to stay in her room. I didn't care if they were in our rooms, just that they were out of the garden proper. Just as soon as the gardener learned about the calls and the walls were coming down, I didn't even want to think about what would happen to any girl found outside of them. Every word of the whispered because it didn't know how strong the mics were, and didn't know if the gardener already heard it was son intended. I found Eleni and Azora in the cave, Teresa in the music room, Marinka in the room would no longer be hers, and Ravina and Naziri helping her pack all their embroidery stuff. Wilna and Zulma were in the kitchen, watching Lorraine cry hard enough to set her wig askew. Pia was a pond studying the sensors of the water level. By one, I found them and passed the news along, and they walked quickly away. Servat was the last one I found, her entire front pressed against the glass of Zara's display case. Intricate black and white, orange-yellow wings of a pearl crescent filled her back, and her eyes were closed and stood motionless. Servat, what the fuck are you doing? She opened her eye and looked at me, trying to imagine what it's like in there. Seeing that she's dead, I don't think she can help you with that. She doesn't know either. Can you smell it? The honeysuckle? She took her head and back to the glass. The formaldehyde. My biology teacher used to preserve specimens for dissection. They must have a ton of it in that room, because the smell is so strong here. It was where he prepares for us in cases, I sighed. Servat, we need to stay in the rooms. The shit's hitting the fan, because of Keeley and Desmond. She touched the locked door, protecting it by a locked code. We always had to be really careful formaldehyde. Even diluted alcohol was not always stable. I never felt bad for not getting close to Servat. She's a strange duck. But she let me pull her away and toss her into her room. I ran back up into a cliff and one of the trees and tried to see if anything was going on. But I couldn't see the house, much less the front property. The gardener, plenty of money and plenty of space. Bad combination when it comes to psychopathic tendencies. A light flickers violently and hurled himself over the edge of the cliff, scraping the banging as I clambered around through the rough holds and through the waterfall and left my room before the walls came down. Bliss handed me a towel. It occurs to me, half an hour too late, that we might been better off all getting together in one place at the garden. If Desmond calls the cops and we're in the inner greenhouse, they insist on checking it out, right? If we're out here, they'd see us. Believe it or not, I thought of that. I stripped away my soaked dress and pulled the dress I'd been given Desmond's rival, the one with the back. I wasn't one of the gardener's favorites because it obscured the wings, but at the moment I didn't care. I just wanted to be running, to be fighting, doing almost anything but sit in that tiny room and wait. If he's able to talk the police out of investigation, or if he was able to convince Desmond not to make the call, what do you suppose he'll do with nobody who disobeyed the room call? Damn it. Bliss, I'm scared, I whispered. I sank down in the bed and watched Keeley's hand. He took it and curled it into me, seeking comfort. I hate not being able to hear anything. Marinka and I once experimented with shrieking at the top of our lungs during a maintenance session. Our rooms were right next to each other, and we couldn't hear a thing, even when the vents closed and the walls came down. Hours passed before the walls went up. We stayed in our rooms first, too scared to move. We all hated sitting still. We wouldn't stand it anymore. Walked out in the garden and see how our world had changed. Maybe finally it was for the better. Was it? Edison asked when it was clear she was not going to continue. No. Wow. A good cliffhanger for the end of part 2. And just, honestly, good way to end it. But yeah. Today we read pages 221 to 239. I'm in a weird state today because I just keep continuously pausing. And I don't know why. It's like I got a cut in my mouth. I've been trying to figure out if it's a cut or if it's like a burn. I can't tell. But we read pages 221 and 239. Next time we'll be reading pages 242 to page 260, part number 3. Of course, it's less than that because 240 is technically, let's see, a blank page. 241 is the number 3. 242 is another blank page. 243 is half a page. And 244 is a full page. So technically, we're only reading 16 pages next episode. But hey, I ain't no stickler. What I do know that is time for... Reading Corner of the Day. Doing it up Stonsey's way, but today we are learning about the NewFoundland. Man. Look at this dog. He's so silly looking. Big old dogs like that. Man, maybe it's my chair. I don't know. I don't know. I've just been feeling weird today. I've been feeling weird these past couple days. Like, nothing is correct type of weird. I don't know why. When I was younger, when I had these feelings, I always thought I was a psychic because something else would happen and I would have no reaction, but I should feel that reaction beforehand. But yeah. What a weird looking dog. But before I can make fun of anything, or anything, especially if I find it interesting or if it's about government, I should learn of its history. Not only does it make me look smart in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, or, my pirate on a stand that's being covered by a flashlight. But yeah, it makes me more intelligent. Now, intelligence doesn't necessarily lie in just knowing things, it lies in knowing things and being able to tell them to others. That's why some of the smartest people you ever meet are teachers and doctors, though there are some dumb teachers and there's some dumb doctors, and that could just be sociability. Now, the history of the Newfoundland is that, as its name suggests, the Newfoundland was developed on the coast of Newfoundland, where the agreement about the origin increases. Although it ultimately traces back to the Tibetan Mastiff, no actual record exists of a Tibetan Mastiff being brought from Newfoundland. Some authorities believe that it descends from the Tibetan Mastiff by way of the Great Pyrenees. In 1602, its first permanent colony in the Rouge Naust was settled, complete with Pyrenees dogs. These dogs are crossed with black English retrievers belonging to English settlers. Some husky blood may also have been introduced. Whatever the ingredients, the result was a massive water-loving, cold-resistant dog found in the either solid black or black with white coloration. The latter, Landseer. Newfoundland was only identified in 1779. The Newfoundland predates it only a few years, named after an individual dog called Newfoundland. The Newfoundland distinguished itself as all-purpose water dog, hauling heavy fishing nets through the cold water and saving many people from watery graves. Its work doesn't stop on dry land, where it served as a draft dog and a pack animal. European visitors were so impressed that they returned to Europe with many specimens, and it is here that the breed first entered a show ring. The export of the dogs from Newfoundland, along with the laws forbidding ownership of more than one dog, drove the breed's numbers down at its place of origin. The breed's stronghold reached England, and American fanciers resorted to replenishing their stock on English dogs. After World War II, the tables turned and American Newfoundlands were responsible for reviving the decimated English stock. Recovery in both countries now complete with Newfoundland is one of the most popular of the giant breeds of dogs. Although the solid black color almost identified with the breed, the black and white Newfoundlands, dubbed Landiers for any well-known artists who first portrayed them, are so popular. Now, let's just say you want one of these dogs for yourself. What's the temperament? How is it good with kids, and will it be better at history than them? Well, hold on a second. The temperament of the Newfoundland is that it's the most important single characteristic of the Newfoundland is sweetness of temperament. The Newfoundland is calm, patient, easygoing, gentle, and amiable. The friend of all, it is a family is threatened. However, the Newfoundland can act protectively. So this is good with family and protects the home. So what's the upkeep? How do I keep my Newfoundland good and ready? Well, the upkeep of the Newfoundland is that this easygoing dog needs daily exercise and stay fit, either in the form of moderate walk or short romp. It loves to swim and pull, especially in cold weather. Some breeders contend that Landseers tend to be more active and need more exercise than solids. It does not do well in hot weather and can be kept outside only in temperate and cold weather. It's best when allowed access to both house and yard, and it needs a lot of room to inside stretch out. Its coat needs combing twice weekly, and more than shedding. Newfs do drool and also tend to be messy drinkers. Now, if you are a child, please cover your ears. If you're a teenager or an adult who owns a Newfoundland, please listen in as we're going to be talking about the health. Their major concerns are SAS, cystinuria, elbow dysplasia, CHD, and gastrotorsion. Minor concerns are OCD, entropin, estropion, VWD, cataracts, and cruciate ligament ruptures. They're occasionally seen with epilepsy. The suggested tests should be for the hips, elbow, cardiac, VWD, and eye. Their lifespan is 8 to 10 years, and a note from second edition PhD Carolyn Cole states that Newfoundlands do not tolerate heat well. Some are sensitive to anesthesia. Now, imagine this picture is in front of you. What's the form? What's the function? What does the Newfoundland do? Well, the Newfoundland is a large, heavily boned, powerful dog, strong enough to pull a drowning man with rough seas and imposing enough to make an effective guard. It is slightly longer than it is tall. Its gait gives an impression of effortless power and good reach and drive. Its double coat consists of a soft, dense undercoat and its coarse, moderately long, and straight outer coat. Its soft expression reflects a benevolent, dignified temperament. Now, for the final section of today's video, we gotta go like this. it's a tier list. So 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is worse, and 1 is the worst unless it comes to grooming. Now, the energy level and exercise requirements are at a 2. Playfulness is at a 3. Affection level is at a 5. Friendliness towards pets and strangers are at a 5. Friendliness towards dogs is at a 4. Ease of training, watchdog ability, and sadly, grooming requirements are all at a 3. Protection ability is at a 4. And cold tolerance at a 5, with a debuff of heat tolerance being at a 1. A weight of a healthy male Newfoundland should be 130 to 150 pounds, and a female is 100 to 120 pounds. The height of an average male Newfoundland is 228 pounds. 28 inches. And for a female is 26 inches. Because if it was feet, we'd be living in a world of giants. Well, not so giant as it is. Well, I guess it is giant. It just looks small. The next breed we'll be talking about is the one we'll learn about in the next episode. So, I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. I'm sorry. I'm going to slam my head into a wall. I'm sorry that I've been very today. I don't know why. I'm going to go check my mouth and see if this is like an infection or something, because it's been weird with me today. And my mouth's producing more saliva to combat it, but of course I keep opening my mouth and spitting everywhere, and also swallowing my saliva, which is causing me to choke. So yeah, I'll make sure this isn't very occurrent. But yeah, super fantastic, wonderful day, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.